Most people believe they have time to spare. They tell themselves they'll start next month, next year, once things settle down. They watch others build the life they want and quietly assume their own turn will come later, on its own schedule. Days blur into weeks, weeks blur into a decade, and one morning they wake up and realize the later they were waiting for has already passed them by. Here is the truth almost no one accepts in time. The people who succeed are not the ones who eventually found the right moment. They are the ones who stopped waiting for it. Whether you were born into money or nothing at all, every single one of us is given the same 24 hours today. No one gets extra. No one gets a refund. My name is Dhiren, and this is the story of a man named Kian who learned, almost too late, what an hour was actually worth. Kian was clever. Everyone who met him said so. He had ideas for a business, plans to learn a trade, a half-finished notebook of things he meant to build one day. But whenever his older brother asked him when he'd actually start, Kian would laugh it off. "There's no rush," he'd say. "I'll get to it." When a mentor at his old job offered to teach him a skill that could double his income, Kian nodded politely and said, "Maybe next season, once work slows down." When his friends spent their evenings studying, practicing, building something small on the side, Kian spent his watching them from a distance, telling himself he'd catch up eventually. Months passed this way, then years. His notebook of plans grew thicker with ideas and no thinner with action. Kian still believed, quietly and without ever saying it out loud, that time was a resource he had an unlimited supply of. One evening, Kian sat on the harbor wall, watching the boats come in, doing what he always did, nothing in particular. An old man named Samir, who kept the small lighthouse at the end of the pier, sat down beside him without asking. "You come here most evenings," Samir said. "What are you waiting for?" Kian shrugged. "Just haven't found the right time to start yet." The old man studied him for a long moment. "What would you build," Samir asked, "if you knew today was the only day you'd ever get?" Kian opened his mouth to answer and found he had nothing to say. He had never once asked himself that question. Samir reached into his coat and pulled out a small candle and a match. He lit it, and they watched it burn in silence as the evening wind pushed against the flame. "Watch closely," Samir said, and pointed to the wax sliding down its side, dripping onto the stone and hardening there, cold and useless, never to return to the candle again. Kian watched the wax fall and harden. He didn't yet understand what the old man meant by showing him, but something about it unsettled him more than he expected. The next evening, Kian returned to the harbor on his own, half hoping Samir would be there again. He was, sitting in his usual spot, mending a fishing net with slow, patient hands. "I've been thinking about the candle," Kian admitted, sitting down beside him. Samir didn't look up from his net. "And what did you decide it meant?" Kian shook his head. "I don't know. That's why I came back." The old man set the net down and pointed out toward the water, where 3 boats sat at different points along the horizon. "That one," he said, pointing to a boat still out at sea, "is your future, still moving, still yours to steer." He pointed to a second boat, halfway into the harbor. "That one is today, almost home, but not yet. You can still change its course." Then he pointed to a third boat, already tied to the dock, empty, its work for the day finished. "And that one is yesterday. Wherever it went, whatever it carried, it's done. No matter how badly you want to send it back out, it won't move again." Kian looked at the 3 boats for a long time. For the first time, the candle from the night before made sense to him, not as a story, but as his own life, dripping away one quiet evening at a time. That night, alone in his room, Kian did something he had never done. He counted. Hours spent scrolling with no purpose. Hours spent resting long after he was rested. Hours spent almost starting and then deciding tomorrow would do just as well. When he added it all up, the number frightened him.
It wasn't his money he'd been careless with. It wasn't his luck or his chances. It was the one thing he could never buy back.
The next morning, Kian made a decision. He would stop calling it someday. He would stop treating his notebook of plans like a museum of things he almost did. It wasn't easy. The old pull toward comfort was strong. Some mornings he wanted to sleep an extra hour instead of opening that notebook. Some nights he wanted to tell himself, just this once, that tomorrow would still be there. But each time he thought of the wax hardening on the stone and the boat already tied to the dock, done for good. So he began, small at first. He woke earlier. He opened the notebook and turned one idea into one real step. He asked the questions he used to avoid. He practiced the skill he kept postponing. He stopped waiting for the right time and started treating every ordinary hour like it was the only one he'd get. Slowly, the notebook stopped being a place where ideas went to wait. It became a place where they went to grow. 2 years later, Kian sat across from his old brother, who now ran a small business alongside him, the very idea that had once sat unfinished in a notebook. A younger cousin, watching the two of them work, finally asked Kian the question everyone eventually did. "What's the secret? How did you turn all this around so fast?" Kian smiled, the way Samir once had. "There's no secret," he said. "I just stopped waiting for the right time to start." His cousin looked confused, the way Kian himself once had. Not long after, Kian found himself walking along that same harbor at dusk. He saw a young man sitting on the wall, watching the boats come in, doing nothing in particular, the way Kian used to. He sat down beside him, uninvited, the way Samir once had with him. "What are you waiting for?" Kian asked. The young man shrugged, just as Kian once had. Kian pulled a candle from his coat, lit it, and set it on the stone between them. They watched the wax slide down its side, drip onto the stone, and harden there, gone for good. "Watch closely," Kian said quietly. "This is what every hour you don't use looks like. It doesn't wait for you. It just hardens into yesterday." The moral of this story is simple, and most people already know it, they just haven't let themselves feel it yet. Time is the one resource nothing can replace. Money lost can be earned again. A failed attempt can be tried again. A missed opportunity is often followed by another. But an hour, once it's gone, never comes back. Not for anyone, no matter how much they wish it would. People spend years waiting for the perfect moment to begin, not realizing the perfect moment doesn't exist anywhere but in the one they're standing in right now. If you keep telling yourself later, one day you'll look back and see exactly how many years later quietly took from you. And the people who build the life they wanted rarely got there by being the smartest or the richest or the luckiest. Most of the time, they simply respected their hours more than everyone else around them did. Here's what this story means to me, plainly. Every day handed to you is worth more than any amount of money sitting in an account, because money can always be made again. Today can't. Most people don't lose their future in one dramatic moment. They lose it quietly, an hour at a time, telling themselves it doesn't count because it's just today. But today is the only currency any of us are actually spending. If there's one thing I'd ask you to do after watching this, it's small. Pick the one thing you've been telling yourself you'll start later and give it just one honest hour today. Not the whole plan, just 1 hour. That's how every real change actually begins. If this story reached you the way it was meant to, consider subscribing. This channel exists for exactly these kinds of reminders, the ones that are easy to know and hard to actually live by. And if you're looking for what to watch next, don't miss Never Doubt God's Plans, a reminder that even when life feels confusing, something is still quietly working in your favor behind the scenes. Your future isn't waiting somewhere out there for you to arrive. It's being built right now, 1 hour at a time. So spend this one wisely, because it will never come around again.